Hey folks, welcome to another episode of 5 to 15 with Musickers. I'm thrilled to be here with professional music therapist Abby Hershauer. Abby, thank you so much for taking the
Yeah,
time to be here.
yeah,
We're in her beautiful home here, and I love this Wurlitzer piano you have and this guitar you have. It's a very musical spot. And one of the things I'm wondering is, we were talking earlier. You actually are a jazz singer, and you've been doing music for a while.
yeah.
But when you went to school, you went a different direction than the traditional performance or education route, and that led you to your career now as a music therapist. Can you share with us a little bit about how that happened, sort of that journey?
Yeah. So I got my undergraduate degree at Western Carolina, over in Cullowhee. And like you said, as a vocalist at the time, I know that like programming has changed a bit there, but yeah, I got thrown into the situation of do I perform or do I teach? And neither of those felt really exciting to me, so I was getting my minor in psychology. And I just kind of remember having that undergraduate crisis of like, what are my options? How do I find out what I can do? Got to Google. Google helped me out, and I remember finding music therapy, and I got really excited. App State is a local spot where there's a big music therapy program, so of course that kind of showed up quickly for me throughout Googling. But yeah, I ended up like reaching out to some folks and finding out about music therapy, and I just remember feeling so relieved of like, okay, this is the psychology and music components that I'm interested in. Um, and it felt like a better fit than performing or teaching for me.
That's
So
wonderful.
yeah, I kind of at Western there wasn't too many folks that were really knowledgeable about music therapy. It was kind of like a I've heard about that, or maybe you could find out more. So I kind of took it upon myself to do some reading and find out some spots. But
Well, it's one of the fastest growing fields in the music industry, and yet I think it's still something that's slowly catching on in academic settings.
yeah, yeah, and AMTA is the Association for Music Therapy, and if you look at like a map of the U.S. of where the programs are, it's just all kind of sprinkled and spread out.
Yeah.
Music therapy has roots in Kansas,
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of spots in the Midwest, but then it is growing, which is really exciting, and I would love to see more of it locally because I think we have a great community for it.
So it sounds like you were basically combining a music degree and a psychology degree.
Mm-hmm.
Once you graduated with those degrees and you began to work in the field, were there additional things you had to do in terms of internships or apprenticeships or other things to get into the industry as a working professional?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is, I think, since it is a newer field, there's a lot of misconceptions or like misunderstandings about it. So I love to talk about music therapy, love to talk about it. But yeah, so I have my bachelor's degree in music and psychology, and to be a working board certified music therapist, there is a college degree required. It goes from bachelor's through PhD. So you're able to get your doctorate. I have my master's degree, but that's not necessary to practice as a music therapist. You can be a music therapist with a bachelor's. But there's clinical work, there is lots of lecture work. So I do have a college degree in music therapy, but also there was like over 1,200 hours of clinical work. We were talking about my Wurlitzer a little bit before, and this actually came from my internship that I did at Broughton Hospital, which is a level 5 psych hospital that is local here. It's in Morganton, so about an hour out. That was an unpaid 6-month long internship,
Oof.
which is required to be a music therapist. Some of them are starting to be like reimbursed, which is great, but an internship is an internship. So throughout the degree, there's like practicum that we would do weekly. Yeah, lots of clinical work, but also the degree. So that's a big misconception. I do work at the hospital now, and there's a lot of advocacy like within being a music therapist, and I get a lot. There's the music lady, there's the performer, and it's like, oh no, what I'm doing here. There's a lot more to it than that. So our degrees are really kind of split in half of therapy work, learning about the different frameworks that therapists practice from, but also our musicianship skills, because that's really important. A lot of improvisation and live music making too. So I would say the degrees are kind of split in half of needing to have enough tools in your back pocket from both sides to be an effective music therapist, which is challenging but fun. that's why I was excited to find it, because I was like, I don't want to perform, but I don't want to just be a talk therapist.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a great avenue if that's something you're interested in.
You get to combine both worlds, which is really exciting. And earlier we were talking about your work with GIM, which is something I never heard about until you shared that with me. Do you mind sharing with our viewers what GIM is and kind of the work you do with that in your position at Mission Hospital?
Yeah. So as a music therapist locally, I work part-time at Mission Hospital for the behavioral health units. So kind of short-term acute psychiatric stay. And then also part-time on my own, I do contract work as a GIM music therapist. And GIM is guided imagery and music. So it's a type of psychotherapy that uses classical music to support in a therapeutic way. And I know we were talking about where it kind of started from, and Helen Bonny was a music therapist in the 70s that was present with the LSD trials and working as a music therapist to support those experiences. So what a session typically looks like, it's changed and altered since its beginning, which is great that we don't need to use LSD to have those profound experiences anymore.
Right.
So now what a session looks like, it's typically about 90 minutes. And it would be just a one-on-one session. The client, it starts with like a 15 to 30 minutes depending on what the need is for the day. It is a regular talk therapy, psychotherapy session, that's a time for me to assess what the client needs musically and therapeutically from me. And then we go into a relaxation part where I would invite the client to lay down, get comfortable, close their eyes when they're ready. And that's when I would initiate some kind of relaxation piece, like taking a transitional breath to kind of move into the imagery work that's coming up. And then based off of what was brought up in the verbal part at the beginning, I would pick a music program to support that. The music programs are typically like 30 to 40 minutes, 45 maybe. And throughout that experience, the client would be verbalizing their imagery. So if they come into the session and they're really nervous, they're talking so fast, have a lot of things going on in their life that they want to look into, I would probably try to pick a relaxation and a program to match that, right? To bring that in. Like we're starting out at the beach then, like the wind's blowing, the waves are high, it might be cold out, it might be really hot. And
establish that setting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're wanting to kind of use an ISO principle and meet the client where they're at to support that.
An ISO principle?
Yeah, ISO principle is used a lot in music therapy, and I'm sure live music you might just not use the term for it, but to meet the client or the crowd where they're at. So I'm sure like if you walk into a venue and it's really quiet and everyone is like whispering, like perhaps you don't start with a bang and like the biggest energy piece that you could find. It's kind of meeting someone where they're at and then of course being able to shift that energy as it's needed.
Nice.
So yeah, you might end up with people dancing and partying it up, but you might not start off with it at a bang and people are relaxed.
Reading the room and kind of determining what musically makes sense.
Yeah. Exactly. So based off of that, I would pick a program to meet them where they're at. And within that 30 to 40 minute music program, we're talking back and forth through the imagery. So if I had started you out at this beach, as a client, you might say, oh, it's really cold. And it's a lot of somatic and kinesthetic imagery too, not just like the visuals of what's around.
You mentioned earlier, like, can you feel the sand?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. And like, how do you feel as you're on the beach? Like connecting that visual imagery with other parts of your body as well. And as the guide, I'm just supporting what you're experiencing. So I'm not like, do you want to, if you're at a road has two paths, I'm not saying like, well, what's on the right hand side? Do you want to go over there?
Right.
I'm saying like, oh, how do you feel as you see the two paths? Like, what do you sense about the paths? Where are you wanting to go?
Facilitating, but not in a way that's guiding or pushing someone towards a particular outcome.
Exactly, yeah. And the classical music works so great for it for so many reasons, but I mean, if you think of any classical music and close your eyes, I think so quickly music makes it easier to bring imagery into an experience of, oh, sounds like a little rabbit running around on a trail, or, I think there's something about these music programs that are really special, but yeah, we'll go through that for like 40 minutes, and then there's another psychotherapy component at the end to verbally process what came up and like how that relates and how it transfers outside of the session. So if the whole imagery experience, if you were running really fast and like couldn't settle down, maybe like taking time to talk about like, how does that relate to your life? Are you feeling rushed right now? Like what things are you missing along the way? Or
I feel like right now, I mean, this is incredible you're talking about. I almost feel like this is inadvertently perhaps a music education advocacy or a music advocacy commercial, because this is relating to helping people's mental health. I mean, this is something at a foundational level that has, I think, big implications for people's well-being in society. Do you have any stories of, and obviously, you know, there's certain things you can't share because of client confidentiality, but just any experiences you've had that you felt were transformative, where you really felt that sense of, I've made a difference in this person's life?
Yeah, and I think those feel really different compared to my work at the hospital in GIM. It can be a different clientele and different reasons as to why people are coming in. Like at the hospital, I'm dealing with folks that maybe just had an attempt 24 hours ago. They get admitted to the emergency department and then they come to the unit that I'm working on. So in that moment, it's more crisis stabilization and giving somebody hope for the moment. I think within acute and short-term care, it's more planting seeds. And I think music can be a great way to do that, as opposed to in GIM, there's more long-term possibilities to work with folks. Yeah, and I think that it's nice to work on both ends. And as a music therapist, there's so many settings and facilities that you can work at, which is great. As it grows, there's more spots that we can get into, which is wonderful. But I think in GIM work, it's more of this growth as a person that I see and awareness. I think typically folks that sign up to do GIM sessions have an open-minded awareness that they want to grow or become aware of things in their life. And I think that takes a lot of courage. And imagery can get darker and more intense, you know, like you can fall into a trap and there's a wall and you want to touch it, but like you feel frozen, right? And I think people that are courageous to stick through that and find like what was behind feeling stuck and where might that come from. I feel really honored in those sessions.
Yeah.
In all of them, even sessions where folks need to rest and they like lay down with a deer in a field. Like it's hard to find rest. I think no matter what the experiences are that people bring into GIM, I feel really honored to be a part of that experience because it's very vulnerable to share those kind of things with someone.
Well, thank you for creating a safe space and being able to help people. I mean, I can't imagine how many people's lives you've touched and improved. So thank you for what you do in our community.
Yeah.
And I guess before we go, obviously you work at Mission, but you also said that you do some private work as well.
Yep.
Is there a website or a place that people that want to learn more about what you do, they can find out about it?
Yeah, I do consult calls and take clients, and I'd be happy to list out my email too for y'all to reach out. There's a few GIM therapists in town, but certainly not enough. So
Yeah.
I'm always excited to talk about it. Yeah. My email is amhmtbc@gmail. But yeah, I'd be happy to include that. And you can always Google it, look it up. As music therapy grows, I think there is more accessibility to finding more out about the field, which is great.
Wonderful. Abby,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day, y'all.